Wow. What can I say about Drag Race UK 6 other than incredible job to everybody involved? The amazing cast, the story producers, the editors, the judges. I can confidently say this was my favorite Drag Race season of 2024. And I mean, I'm not out here watching every single season around the globe, but based on what I've seen from others, a lot of other people have this in their top three. The UK franchise has been a bit of a roller coaster. Seasons 1 and 2 are regarded as gold quality Drag Race, only to then plummet immediately with season 3, which was one of my least favorite Drag Race seasons of all time. Season 4 was okay, but season 5 really felt like a return to form for the franchise. I made a whole video about it. But season 6, I think it might be my favorite season of UK. It has everything you want in a Drag Race season. Pretty fair judging, an insanely talented and charismatic cast with a lot of synergy together, show-stopping runways, insane lip syncs, and one of the best Snatch games ever. This cast did not come to play, and while there wasn't a whole lot of drama, this cast was just so intriguing and lovable that you didn't need any of that to be entertained. But it is a Drag Race season, so of course there's going to be some strings being pulled behind the scenes. So we will look at each episode one by one and discuss all of the placements and whether I think they were fair or rigged. But I won't be doing a unrigged video because I genuinely just don't think that a lot would change if you were to unrig it. This is not a super rigged season. So I'll talk about things that I would change in the moment, but we're not going to do like a whole simulator. But before we start getting into the episode by episode breakdown, let's take a quick look at this cast. I already mentioned how talented they all are, but there are so many episodes where like only one or two queens do less than stellar, or no one does less than stellar. And I'm sure this season was a nightmare to judge for the panel of judges because, like, how do you pick apart when everyone does good in a challenge and you have to send someone home? Spoiler alert, I've done it on Drag Duel and it sucks. It makes you feel horrible because you're sending someone home who did a good job. Obvious standouts from this cast are Lavoie, who was a massive name in the UK drag scene already, Kyron Thrax, who ruined the judges seemed to immediately fall in love with after her wacky talent show performance in episode 1, and then Relisa Slaves, who was kind of the narrator of the season along with Marmalade, and another queen the judges seemed to just adore. I think most people are familiar with Relisa's drag mother Frida Slaves, so I immediately felt endeared to Relisa, both because of that and because she just has this infectious charm. But something I really appreciated with this season was how diverse the cast was, both culturally and in their drag. Drag Race UK isn't known for its particularly diverse casting, and this felt like a step forward. I still think there's more they can do to diversify their cast, but we're headed in the right direction for sure. Seeing two queens from St. Lucia getting to bond and talk about that, as well as two Filipina queens, was awesome representation to see for the UK franchise. Now, let's get into the episodes, starting with the Cabaret talent show, which was the premiere episode. The vibes for this season were immediately correct with this premiere. The cast chemistry was off the charts from literally the jump. Everyone seemed so excited to be there, and they delivered an incredible talent show and first runway. The Cabaret themed talent show was so fun. I loved the set and how both relaxed and like specific it was. Lavoie opening the show was perfect since her number was already very cabaret theater energy. And we had such a diverse assortment of talents. It wasn't just everyone lip syncing to their own song like we usually get in like the US versions. We had live singing, live makeup, spoken word, comedy sketches, lap dances, burlesque. Like there were so many standouts. This was a non-elimination episode, which I do feel was warranted, as well as just being nice since like we get to see everyone for 2 episodes. If there were a bottom, it would probably be Chara and Zahira, but neither did like poorly, and I think in other seasons they very easily could have been safe. This truly was like a stacked talent show. The judges pick the top 6 to critique, and the rest are just safe. And for the most part, I fully agreed with what they did. I do think that the top 5 is very clear, and then Actavia, Marmalade, or Saki could have taken that 6th spot, as they all had good talents and runways. But the top 2 was very clearly Kyron Thrax and Lavoie, and they lip sync for the win. God, I posted this on my story the other day, but these lip sync songs this season were everything to me. Besides a few like nondescript pop EDM songs, it was hit after hit after hit. And they allowed the cast to show off their personalities and have fun with some of these choices, like David Bowie's Let's Dance, Don't Stop Me Now from Queen, Never Gonna Give You Up, are you kidding? Girls on Film by Duran Duran. Like, we had so many male singers, which I always enjoy. I don't like that, like, I don't like the restrictions of only doing female singers. But we also had queens like Goldfrapp and Kylie be included as well. I'm just so obsessed with the song choices. Time Warp! Time Warp! I hope the US producers take note after like the abysmal song choices for season 16, because this was just like a breath of fresh air. Kyron wins the lip sync to the Goldfrapp song against Lavoie and wins the first challenge of the season. And like, wow, the parallels of the premiere and the finale with the top 2. Kyron's look in this episode might be my favorite look of the season, and she immediately just came in swinging, showing her personality, her wacky take on drag, but also the high fashion influences that she always has. We also see the beginnings of her season-long arc, which is kind of her cocky attitude, sometimes being off-putting to the other queens. But then it's really just like a front because she had no confidence in herself for so long. Kyron was such a fleshed out personality on this season, and her friendship with Lavoie was really amazing to watch blossom and evolve as the season went on. So seeing her kill this first episode was really just like a herald of things to come, as she would demolish basically the entire season. Moving into the second episode, this is where things definitely get thrown off a bit, as unfortunately Saki Yu had an accident in her hotel and has to leave the season to heal. This sucked so bad. Saki was one of my early favorites, and looking at her incredible runway package, I truly think she would have made a deep run into the season. I hope we get to see her brought back and given another chance. I really think she could be a huge star for this franchise. But this was one of the very few episodes this season that the cast did not deliver. It was the design challenge, and they had to make looks based off of rooms from RuPaul's home. So they're split into teams of 3 and kind of become like a fashion house. And they have to make collections that include a cocktail dress, a red carpet dress, and a business look. Also, I'm just now realizing that we didn't have a ball this season, so that's a little bit strange. I can't even think of the last time that there was a season without a ball. I think this episode was pretty easy to judge. There was a very clear top team of Chanel O'Connor, Marmalade, and Lil, and a bottom 2 of Actavia and Kiki Snatch. But with Saki's premature elimination, producers didn't want to send home a second queen this episode, so Actavia and Kiki are spared, and the top 3 lip sync for the win. I get this, since it's very hard to pick a winner among the 3. I think they all absolutely smashed it. They all helped each other out. It really was a team effort. But I kind of wish they just like all got the win, and then Kiki and Actavia lip synced. Knowing how their lip sync later in the season goes, it would have been a double save anyway, and no one would have went home, and then we would have got to see the rematch later on. But yeah, most of the looks of this episode range from fine to meh to like bad outside of that top 3. And this is the episode I really saw Marmalade as a potential threat moving forward. I gotta be honest, in the premiere, I kind of expected her to be an early out, but this episode absolutely proved me wrong and made me change my mind, and like, I have stanned her ever since. Her getting a storyline with Chanel also boded well for her in my eyes, as Chanel is like the villain, in quotations, of the season, even though she doesn't get a villain edit and like didn't do anything that bad. She was more like the shady queen who was stirring the pot, and Marmalade was seen as the heroic one in that storyline. So I was like, okay, we are in for like a season of Marm, and I'm here for it. I think the edit of this season was fantastic. Chanel easily could have just been edited to be like hated and just some like shady bitch, but she was very three-dimensional, and I think we understood where she was coming from. Basically everyone on the season outside of like Dita Garbo was pretty multi-dimensional in the edit, and we got to know them pretty well. And when you care about the cast, you care more about the season. So I always think that is a huge plus. The next episode is the acting challenge, which, shocker, the writing is terrible, but the queens do a fantastic job injecting their personalities into the roles, and it turns out pretty good in the end. They're doing movie trailer parodies for like classic British rom-coms, and this is a big episode for Dita Garbo, who came in with this huge presence, seemed like she was going to be a force, but has been pretty timid and just doing average thus far. So watching this, I knew she was either going to win the challenge or go home. And unfortunately, it was the latter. Poor Dita got a pretty bad edit this season. I'd say she's like the only one that did. She doesn't get a ton of content for the first 2 weeks. Then she goes home. Then she gets a very shady edit in the roast episode where the editors highlight multiple times that she's kind of a poor sport when it comes to getting roasted. I definitely feel bad for Dita, and I hope she takes it in stride and continues to slay the world with her talents unbothered. Now, getting back to the challenge, there's a lot of queens who stand out this episode, but definitely Kyron as Hugh Grant and Relisa as like the creepy stalker kid are the top 2 of the week. But like Marm, Lil, Octavia, and Chara, I also think did fantastic. Everyone else either did fine or poorly, with the bottom 2 of Dita and Kiki Snatch being very obvious. Kiki had such a strong premiere with her live singing talent show, but the week prior, she had the worst design look by far, and I would say she had the weakest performance and runway in this episode. She has such a great personality, and we'll see in the next episode, when it comes to performing, she's outstanding, but I do think she needed to kind of hone in on some of her other talents, like comedy and looks, before coming to this season. This is also the second episode in a row that Zahira ends up in the low placement, and it's not because she flopped either episode. I think she did okay in both. She really just is the lowest of the girls that do fine. And that's how stacked this cast is, because Zahira actually had some great moments in the skit and made the judges laugh, but everyone else just did that much better. And her runway in this episode was definitely one of the weakest. This was a fantastic runway. It was the new Romantics theme, and God, this cast just like understood the assignment. Amazing looks across the board, and having Simon Laban from Duran Duran to judge was just so awesome. Dita and Kiki lip sync to Girls on Film, A+ lip sync choice, and Kiki absolutely demolishes it. She's such a dynamic performer, and you cannot take your eyes off of her. Like, I'm so sorry, Dita, but Kiki pulled focus from the first millisecond of that lip sync, and Dita becomes the first queen to be sent home. Well, after Saki Yu was discharged to the hospital. So we move on with our final 10 queens to the girl groups episode, which is a UK staple after like Breakup Bye Bye and UK Hun. But the franchise has kind of struggled to match those levels of iconery since. BDE was forgettable. I really liked Come Alive in season 4, but I think that's kind of an unpopular opinion. And then Don't Ick My Yum was good, but not great. I actually think Dead or Alive this season comes the closest to those first 2 season songs, but just not quite there. I loved the Halloween theme, obviously, as a spooky bitch. I was so giddy watching this entire episode. It is one of my favorites of the season. This episode begins kind of the recurring instance of one queen flopping in a challenge and everyone else doing super well, which kind of happens a lot. In this episode, it is unfortunately Lil who flops. But, like, oh my god, Lil is one of my favorite UK queens ever. She's so chill and so relaxed, but also so funny. And in a show that constantly punishes people with smaller personalities, I was so worried for Lil early on, but like her energy and personality are like addictive. And not even the judges could deny that and give her one of those like overdone, we need to see some personality critiques. I'm so happy that she seems to be the fan favorite of the season, and I hope she gets a lot of opportunities following the season because, like, she truly is one of the most unique queens this show has ever seen. Her fashion, her confessionals, her lip syncs, she brought so much to this season. Unfortunately, she did not bring much to the girl groups because choreo is Lil's weakness, and she just always seems to psych herself out when she has to do it. 2 of her 3 bottom placements were from choreo challenges, and she has the talent and energy to slay it, but she just always gets in her head. Even in this challenge, her verse is well written and her look is amazing, but she's just so stiff and awkward in her movements, it's very obvious that she was going to be in the bottom this week. The other bottom placement is definitely not as obvious, but Zahira unfortunately just did not stand out very much, and already having had 2 low placements in a row, this was kind of a do or die moment for her. I really think on other seasons of UK that's cast maybe aren't as insanely talented as this one. Zahira could make it a lot further, but on this season, when everyone is firing on all cylinders, she does tend to get overshadowed. But her personality in the confessional, her fashions, like, those are always going to be memorable to me. And she's someone I would love to see come back because I do think she has more to show, especially watching herself back. As for the tops, everyone else does a good job. Relisa, Kiki, Kyron, and Actavia all do phenomenally, and they probably should have just had like a top 4 and a bottom 2, but they decided to instead put Marmalade in the low placement. And this kind of confused me. I thought she had one of the best Mother Nature runways. Her verse was good, her performance was good. She wasn't like a standout, but I don't think she did poorly enough to be low. I probably would have put Chanel there. Her verse was forgettable, and so was her performance. And the runway, I loved the idea. I think the execution was a bit lacking. Relisa gets the win here, and it did feel very correct, although Kiki also absolutely could have gotten it too. But Relisa's verse is just so catchy, and she was just like a superstar on that stage. Relisa was on such a high in these first few episodes after her great talent show, amazing acting challenge, and now this win. Unfortunately, she does kind of bottom a lot towards the end of the season, but her first half was so strong, especially in episodes 3 and 4. Lil and Zahira lip sync to a Mabel song that's like low-key maybe the worst song choice on the season, and I was so worried for Lil because it's like a mid-tempo pop song, and I just did not see that being in her wheelhouse, especially knowing what like a powerful performer Zahira is from that premiere. But much like Lil's personality, her performance style is almost like hypnotic. Like, I don't know what it is, I don't know how to explain it, but she just has it. And while Zahira has a lot of cool moves and stunts, Lil captured my entire attention and the attention of the judges and wins the lip sync, unfortunately sending Zahira home. Next up is another one of my favorite episodes, the Graham Norton Talk Show Challenge. I love Graham Norton. I've loved him before he was on Drag Race. He's just so charismatic and nice. So seeing him get to lead a challenge was awesome. And I love the challenges where we kind of just get to hang out and get to know the queens a little bit better, like Pink Table Talks and some of those monologue episodes. So some this episode did better than others, but I feel like in other seasons, this kind of challenge could be like a cringe fest. But here it was endearing, it was fun, but this was absolutely Lavoie's breakout episode. She had gotten the top 2 placement in the premiere, but since then, she'd just been safe. So I was starting to get a little concerned for her since she came in with such huge expectations. But I feel like all she needed was one challenge where she could kind of flex her stuff, and then it was smooth sailing after. I mean, she was so good at this. No one else even came close to how well she did in this challenge. It was such an obvious win for her. The way she was able to lead the conversations, pipe in with like quips and jokes, but also not feel like she was showboating or doing too much. She is such a professional and has such an infectious personality. I love Lavoie so much. Marmalade and Lil did super well too, but everyone else was just kind of like not on that same level. Relisa was good, but I feel like in other seasons she would have been criticized for being like extremely sexual on what would be like a nighttime talk show. They probably would have been like, oh, this ain't the place for that. But also, never mind, because in British, like, nighttime talk shows, they get pretty crass. So honestly, good for Relisa. Kyron was endearing, but her story was kind of boring in comparison to others. Chara was delightful, but again, she kind of had a boring story. Luckily, she told a second story, which was much better, and I thought should have brought her up to safe, especially with her runway this episode. This was the headpiece runway, probably the most consistent runway of the season besides the New Romantics. Everyone looked great, but Chara had one of the best looks of the night. For me, Octavia, Chanel, and Kiki really struggled for me. Octavia started okay, but seemed like she got a bit flustered and kind of stumbled over her words. And as someone who can't get through 2 sentences without stumbling, you should listen to these scripts unedited. I feel her pain. Kiki was kind of just like awkward. And then Chanel, she just kind of like seemed a little bit fake. Like everyone else felt really genuine, and Chanel felt like she was maybe putting on a bit. I felt that way about Chanel kind of a lot this season. It felt like she came in wanting to play like a bit of a villain, and then immediately took back every negative thing she said and apologized. And then for the rest of her time on the season, she kind of just didn't have anything to do. It sort of felt like she came onto the show maybe playing up a bit of a character, and then dropped that character too quickly and didn't know what to do after. When really, all we want to see is that authenticity. I think the show did kind of keep her from maybe getting a few low placements because they were hoping she would last longer, since she was truly the only person starting any drama whatsoever. But like I said, she quickly dropped that, and then she kind of goes home about halfway in. I do think she should have been low here over Chara, but it also makes sense to give Chara some critiques since she had been safe for 4 episodes in a row. This, unfortunately, was Kiki's last episode, but she goes out in a blaze of glory to Let's Dance by David Bowie, probably the lip sync of the season, but very closely tied with Time Warp. This easily could have been a double save, but I think they saw that Kiki had struggled a lot so far in the competition, while Ru adored Octavia. So it was kind of like Kiki's moment to leave. But I would love to see Kiki grow her drag and come back for like a Versus the World season. She is so much fun to watch and root for, and I think she could easily be a huge superstar with just a tiny bit more finesse. Next, we move on to the Snatch game, and I think this challenge, above any other, shows how strong a cast truly is. And this was by far the best Snatch game I've seen in many years. There were 2 obvious flops in Chanel and Relisa, but everybody else could have been high or like even won on many other Snatch games. Unfortunately, this episode begins the streak of bottom placements for Relisa. In the final 4 episodes before the finale, she lip syncs in 3 of them. I think she really just kind of gets in her head with comedy, and she almost goes in defeated. So of course, she's not going to knock it out of the park going in with that mindset. In challenges like Snatch Game and like the Roast, if you don't go in confident, you've already signed your death warrant. I think Chanel had been underperforming for a while now, but I understand wanting to keep her around since she was the only one starting drama. But like, she hadn't been doing anything dramatic for a while, and it was so clear who the bottom 2 was. There was no way to save her here. But Chanel was a fun presence on the season and had some really stunning looks, this was just not her challenge, which is sad because I was so excited to see someone play Coco Peru. I think that's a character I would like to see someone else try to tackle because I think it could be a real standout. Coco is so funny, and I think her humor could translate well to Snatch Game. Unfortunately, here it did not. But yeah, besides those two, everybody else ate. And that is just kind of like how this endgame goes. In the Rusical, everyone does super well, and the makeover could have easily been a non-elimination if they had room for one. This cast is just so strong, and strong in a lot of different areas, like not just comedy, not just looks. It was incredible to witness. Picking the winner for this episode is definitely hard. Kyron's Elvis was like kind of unexpected, but so funny. I was worried for Lavoie doing Liza Minnelli after two people had already won with her, but she added her own flair and had a lot of really good moments, and like unrehearsed, obviously improv moments. Chara's idea on paper was insane of doing Nadine Coyle in costume as Mary Poppins, but it was hysterical. Lil as Queen Victoria and Marmalade as Marie Antoinette I think are very underrated. I think they were both very funny. And I think about Marmalade saying, I blame the young people in their pronouns all the time. Octavia as the Welsh dragon was definitely funny in moments, but she didn't really have a characterization. She was more just regurgitating things RuPaul found funny earlier in the season. I mean, it was still fun to watch, but Octavia being low does make sense. She was definitely like the third least funny, and her runway was probably the worst of the night. But this also easily could have been like 4 high placements and a bottom 2 yet again. The judges picked both Kyron and Lavoie to win, and this is the moment in the season where like I knew in my heart of hearts they were going to be the final 2, as like the main storyline of this season revolved around their relationship blossoming and contrasting their drag styles and life experiences. I mean, it was really like the old school versus new school storyline to a T. And I get giving the double win. I mean, they both devoured Snatch Game. They both had amazing runways. But, like, I honestly would have been happy with Lavoie or Kyron or Chara winning. And I probably would have just given Kyron the solo win. But I don't think it was rigged that they both got it. And it really adds to their storyline. Plus, Lavoie as Liza Minnelli just saying, where am I? Like, for no reason, out of nowhere, is probably my favorite moment of the Snatch Game. Up next, we have the Rusical, which is another banger of an episode. They are doing a pop to the tops, basically like ranking British pop artists, and then they all come out and perform as that artist. The bottom 2 is unfortunately pretty clear, kind of like with Snatch Game. Everyone did a good job, but the bottom 2 is kind of like, yeah, set in stone. Octavia performed wonderfully, but she was just like Octavia. Like, she was not playing Jerry Halliwell on that stage. That was just Octavia in a Jerry Halliwell cosplay look. And then Lil was fantastic as the host, Cilla Black. I mean, it would always come back to her in between the sets, and she would be super funny. The voice was down, the mannerisms were down. Really funny. But then it came time for the final group number, and much like in the girl groups episode, Lil just froze up. And unfortunately, this was the episode that I crossed Lil out of my winner's contention. She like hadn't gotten a win since episode 2 and just had her second bottom, repeating the same mistake she did back in episode 4. But she was still my favorite on the season, but I at this point was like, she's not winning, and I need to accept that. A lot of people also commented on just how enamored with Octavia Ru was, especially in this episode. Like, not many queens get the kind of sweet words that RuPaul gave her about how much she loved her, how she thought she was so fun to watch. Like, you can so tell when Ru loves a cast and when she's like, whatever. And she very clearly adored this cast. And I always find that makes the seasons even better when Ru is like super invested. I also think about like season 12 is that way. Like, Ru loved that cast, and I think it really added to that season. This was also the night of 1,000 Diana's runway, and bitch, some of these wigs, oof. Like, I get this as a hairstyle these queens probably aren't used to doing, but it was hilarious seeing how bad some of these wigs were. It made like Marmalade's Diana look even more remarkable by comparison. I mean, at this point in the season, there were a lot of people complaining about how Marmalade had come close to so many wins, but still didn't have a badge. And this really felt like her moment for a lot of people. She does super well as Elton John in the challenge, and then came out in this beautiful Diana runway with the most perfect hair. But alas, Lavoie pulls out the win yet again, her third win in a row. And while I do think it was close between them, it was definitely like a two-horse race. I don't think it was rigged that Lavoie won. Her Shirley Bassey was spot on, and she sounded amazing. And the huge risk of like her runway that involved her in flats getting drenched in water, I think completely paid off. Lavoie is just like so good. So yes, it was close, but I do think Lavoie edged Marm out by like a millimeter. We also see great performances from Kyron and Chara and Relisa this episode. Kyron keeps going with the male characters since she's had such success with them thus far and does a great George Michael. I love that George Michael finally got some rep on Drag Race UK. Relisa does Adele, which could have either gone really good or really bad, and luckily she knocks it out of the park. And then Chara has a super funny performance as Kylie. She probably got the best, like, mix, like, with the jokes and just the song. Like, she got really lucky with what she got. But because of her wig, she is thrown into the low placement again. And I really think here they didn't need a low placement. Like, Chara did so good, and she didn't even have the worst Kyron rig. I'd say Kyron and Octavia's were much worse. But it's clear in this episode that with this and the talk show that Chara was definitely like the sacrificial lamb when they didn't want to put one of their faves in a lower spot or just like not have a lower spot. They would just put Chara there. I don't even know who you'd put in a low spot in this episode, but I'm glad that Chara won something in Miss Congeniality because I do think she was a bit overlooked this season. In a lot of seasons, she probably is a fan favorite who gets a lot of high placements, but kind of like Sahira, this season, she definitely fell by the wayside just because of the immense talent of this cast. We see my personal favorite lip sync of the season between Lil and Octavia to Time Warp, which I love Rocky Horror. I love this song. I love that it's so fun and camp, and both of them knew the dance. Like, I don't even know how to keep gushing on this season anymore, but, like, I just keep repeating myself. It's amazing, it's iconic, but, like, everything is. We lose Octavia in what could have been another double Shantae, but I think just looking at her track record, it was definitely about her time to go. But with how much Ru obviously adores her, I would expect Octavia back very soon. And now we get into what is possibly the greatest episode of Drag Race UK ever. My favorite episode of the year, one of the most emotional episodes of Drag Race, I would say ever. It is the makeover, and God, this should have been a top 2 non-elimination. Everyone brought it. Everyone did amazing. Seeing so many parents supporting their queer kids, it could not have come at a better time. Trump had just won here in America. There is so much uncertainty and fear in the LGBTQ community right now. So many of us just watched our parents vote for someone who's about to take all of our rights away. Already, the things that he is planning on doing against trans people is horrific and it's disgusting. But seeing how much hatred and bigotry is running rampant in this country and in so many other countries around the world, this episode just like broke me. I had so much anxiety and sadness and fear and all of these negative emotions, and watching this made it all fall away for just a little bit. And that's the power of this show. Watching Lavoie's 80-year-old father get into drag and unabashedly support his gay son. I mean, there's no words for the power of just watching that. This easily should have been a top 2 of Marmalade and Lavoie, and everyone else is high. Do a double elimination next episode. beg the network for another episode. I don't care. But watching someone go home after how amazingly everyone did and their families are there, like, it just sucked. I guess I agree with Relisa being in the bottom, but I thought Chara did an amazing job on her mother. She looked so beautiful and the looks were adorable, but how can you even pick someone to replace her? Like, I didn't really like the material that Kyron's trash can looks were made of. It looked kind of cheap. It was kind of bending and folding in weird ways, but their hair and makeup and overall look was awesome. The only way to make this episode fair was to make it a non-elimination. But once again, the queen that the judges care about the least goes home in the makeover. Chara should be so proud of herself. I became such a fan of hers this season, and I would love to see her back again as well. Now we're in the top 5. It's the roast, and after 3 challenges in a row where this cast delivered, the streak is broken. This was such a clear win for Lavoie, one of the best roasts in UK history. Her performance, not the whole thing, her performance in specific. This was when I was fully convinced she was winning the season, because how do you put on this performance and not take the whole thing? Well, we'll get there. It was so great seeing Ella and Michael back. They gave some great advice to the queens. It was wild seeing an episode where Kyron was just totally not in her element. She'd been slaying the entire season, but this was definitely her lowest point, which sucks since it's right before the crowning. Some people think she should have been in the bottom this episode over Lil, but I think that is just some Lil bias showing. Kyron may have stumbled a bit, but she had way more jokes land than Lil did. Relisa, again, just went in with no confidence for this roast and definitely did have some funny moments, but like, she was just more doing like a stand-up than roasting anybody. And obviously Lil was off her game as well. She had a lot of stumbles. Marmalade gets a very strange edit in this episode, and it felt like they needed to knock her down a peg after getting her win the week prior. She'd been doing so well quite literally the entire season. Now she has a badge, and it's clear that they wanted the top 2 to be Kyron and Lavoie, so they had to kind of widen that gap for Marm again. Her entire set, Michelle is just not featuring her jokes. And sure, she does have some pretty ruthless jokes, but it's a roast. And I always say you can get away with almost anything at a roast as long as it's funny. And Marmalade's jokes were funny. I thought she did a solid job, not better than Lavoie, but worthy of being in the top, definitely the second best of the episode. And then she was in the top, but they had to give her some pretty harsh critiques regardless, which just kind of felt off. She also wore one of the best looks of the entire season, which I think also added to the reasoning of wanting to knock her down a peg. But yeah, it was a little strange. Unfortunately, we lose Lil here, and I don't know, I kind of don't think she'd come back for an All-Stars, but God, do I want her to. What a unique, interesting, beautiful human. Relisa wins her 3rd lip sync and goes into the finale with 3 bottoms, while the other 3 have not lip synced once, which is crazy. 3/4 of the top 4 never lip syncing is like unheard of. Now, I will say this finale is a little crazy, and Drag Race always crowns their winners based on a lot of factors, not just the finale. But sometimes that leads to the queens who do the best in the finale not getting the win, which can sometimes feel strange, and that is what happened here. Looking at the 2 aspects of this finale. First, we have the top 4 number, which was so unique, unlike anything we've gotten from Drag Race music before. So I really appreciated and loved that. The song is a bop, and Marmalade and Lavoie for sure do the best on it. And then for the runway, yet again, Marmalade and Lavoie do the best. I know all season long it was about Kyron and Lavoie, but I would have loved to see Marm take one of those top 2 spots and really shake things up, because everyone was expecting Kyron and Lavoie, basically from episodes like 2 or 3, to be in that top 2. So for Marmalade to slay the entire season, slay the finale, and take one of those spots would have been a gag, and I think it would have been a welcomed and invited gag. Kyron did okay in the finale number, but her runway is my least favorite of the four. I get her vision, I just don't think it came together. So when Kyron gets picked for top two, I get it because she did great all season long, but I was also like, so did Marmalade, and she did better here. So we have the top two of Lavoie and Kyron, a decision that shocked no one, and we get a lip sync to Don't Stop Me Now by Queen. And Lavoie devoured this. Her look was amazing. She gave us comedy. She gave us everything we needed. And Kyron did great too. But Lavoie just killed it. And then the winner is announced. And it is announced to be Kyron Thrax. And, okay, I know that we're supposed to have this, like, toxic positivity around winners. Saying that we hoped that someone else won makes us hateful losers. But I really think Lavoie should have won this season, and I will give a couple reasons why. In no disrespect to Kyron or Kyron's drag. One, I just think Lavoie did better overall on the season and in this finale. So if we're crowning based on the season performance, it should be Lavoie. She had 4 wins and easily could have also won the makeover, and she had a top 2 placement in the premiere on top of that. She annihilated the season, and in my opinion, she did the best in this finale and in the final lip sync. I also think we're seeing Lavoie at the absolute peak of her drag. She is fully realized, she is at the top of her game, and I don't think if she came back, she would have much more to show. And like, that's not shade, I just truly think she showed us everything she had on this season. And has no reason to return for an All-Stars. Like, I think Kyron would be a great candidate for an All-Stars or Versus the World or whatever. I think in 2 years, she'll be at an even greater peak of her drag and self-confidence, and will have so much more to show off. I mean, a lot of her storyline this season was her dealing with her past traumas and coming into her own. But on an All-Stars, she could come in with a much better headspace and show even more growth. I don't need to see Lavoie on an All-Stars unless it's an all-winner season. Like, Lavoie coming onto an All-Stars just feels wrong. And it's the same way I felt about Nymphia winning over Sapphira on season 16. There's nothing more for Sapphira or Lavoie to show us because they already showed us their winning package. Kyron and Nymphia are incredible artists, but I think in a few more years, they'll be even better. But I think this is where the show is going. It's all about crowning young talent that can tour and have big numbers on social media and release music and all of that. And to me, this felt like if Anitra won season 15. Yes, Anitra did amazing. She slayed that season. But don't play in Sasha Colby's face like that. You know what I mean? Like, you know she's not coming on no damn All-Stars. But Anitra on an All-Stars would be iconic. So, yeah, I was disappointed in the final result, and that's okay. No disrespect to Kyron. I'm sure she's going to do a lot of amazing things with this crown, and she did so well on the season. But also, Team Lavoie forever. This season was my favorite of the year. I think it'll be amazing on a rewatch. It could become my new, comfort season after season 12 and All-Star 6. I really hope they look at what worked so well on this season and keep that energy for next year. Because they've been picking up steam now, and they just have to keep the momentum going. So, what are your thoughts on Drag Race UK 6 now that we're a week or so out? Or I guess 2 weeks now. This video did get delayed because the season 17 cast announcement came out, and I was like, I gotta get a video about that first. So, what are your thoughts on this season? Dragula 666 Riggory will be coming out in, let's say, 2 weeks. I'm going to do another video in between the Riggory of Drag Race UK 6 and the Riggory of Dragula 666. So, late December, expect a Dragula video. Also, I just downloaded Blue Sky. So, if you want to follow me on there, here's my profile. Give me a follow. Hopefully, it's not as disgusting and toxic as Twitter. If it is, I'll leave that too. The links to all of my social media are in the description down below. We just had an incredible mix challenge on Drag Duel. That's kind of one of our like standard challenges at this point. Like we've done it twice. Both times it was great. It shows off what drag artists do in the real world, making a mix and performing to a mix. We also had an amazing runway, so if you want to go check out Drag Duel, that'd be a nice episode to start with. It was almost impossible to judge. It was giving UK6. These people were killing it. And we're getting closer to our finale where we crown our second Drag Duel warrior. So go check out Drag Duel if you want to support me. I would love and appreciate you forever. I think that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you. Oh, Rigged Recap with Kayla will be back. If you didn't watch the last video that was on my channel, go watch it. We break down all the season 17 looks and queens, and it's just me and Kayla shooting the shit. So go watch that. Fine. I think now that's all. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one.